Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you here today with an article from The Federalist. This is dated July 3rd, and it says socialism and communism are just weasel words for slavery. And I think this is important for any of those far leftists out there now that are so much thinking like, oh, communism and socialism, they just mean everybody gets their fair share. It doesn't, like, at all. It never has. And I'm going to harp on that until I take my last breath. These are the most evil ideologies that have ever existed, and, well, here's some of the problems with it. We got Chairman Mao and Stalin. So let us continue on and see what this article has to say. So it says, Marxism is literally slavery. Let's say it every chance we get. As America moves towards communism, it moves towards slavery. And we got to do something to stem that tide sooner rather than later, because it is getting, it's high time here for something to happen, and it's not going to be good. This communism is clearly a modern form of slavery, as I'll explain below. Yet recent opinion polls show that communism is ridiculously popular with younger generations of Americans, especially when it's presented as socialism. And that's disturbing as all hell, because they've been told that it is something that it actually isn't. But let's see what the article says. As in 2020, 49% of Gen Z and 47% of millennials said they viewed socialism favorably. Well, I guess we have a couple of really stupid generations here. Numbers that dipped slightly in 2022. They need to dip a lot more than slightly. They need to dip overwhelmingly. This is the same year. 58% of young Democrats said they had a positive view of socialism because they're Democrats and they're stupid, compared to with only 29% who had a positive view of capitalism. Again, they're stupid. These numbers are all the more horrifying when you consider what communism actually demands of us. Communism is slavery that poses as justice. This has been proven over 100 years of history and by at least 100 million murders at the hands of communist regimes treating their human subjects as chattel. Socialism is the weasel word that paves the path to the slavery we politely call communism or Marxism. I've grown frustrated with well-meaning people who bend over backward to try to explain how Marxism doesn't work or how capitalism is so much better for a healthy economy. These perfectly reasonable arguments fall flat because they're incomprehensible to the vast majority of Americans today, because they are miseducated. Because we occasionally see statements that compare slavery and communism. They've come from a survivor of Maoist China, a public intellectual, the Victims of Communism Foundation, a 19th century political philosopher, and even First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, but it simply isn't enough. Who are these? Survivor? I'm just going to say, She Van Fleet is that one. Yeah, I know her. Definitely follow her. Oh, this is James Lindsay. Yes, he talks about it every day. Follow him on Twitter as well. I don't know about that one. 19th century. Oh, it's another one. And then Eleanor Roosevelt. Okay. So I just wanted to see if they identified who those people were. So yeah, She Van Fleet actually grew up in Maoist China, as it said, and she escaped it. And then James Lindsay should absolutely follow. It says the similarity between Marxism and slavery must be shouted from the rooftops, not reduced to an academic argument. We must build on the emotional understanding people already have of slavery's evils if we hope to escape the bondage of communism. It says globalist Marxism takes slavery to its ultimate level. It says the hour is late. Along with governments worldwide, America is sliding hard in socialism. Our overlords are fast eroding freedom under the guise of justice. Communism is designed to centralize the power of a small vanguard over the vast majority. If this process continues, people inevitably end up reduced to chattel controlled by one central master. Today that's made up of an oligarchy of billionaires, politicians, corporate CEOs, and technocrats. The collective master is not hiding its intention to control the entire means of production, the food supply, education, employment, transportation, information, pop culture, sports, medicine, and ultimately your personal life and relationships. So all links here that you can absolutely go to and check out on your own. It says the self-appointed benefactors in communist societies intend to distribute goods and services according to a social credit system modeled on China's. And if anything is modeled on China's, it's like when it has to do with stuff like this, it's not a good idea. It says your access to goods and services will depend on your political compliance. The COVID mandate served as a test run to check our levels of compliance, and your job is to have nothing, obey orders, and, of course, be happy in your slavery. It says to better understand the urgency, let's take a quick look at some of the key features of communism, how they are reflected in slavery, and how chillingly close we have already come to losing our freedom in America. There are 4 areas in particular where government is moving towards such total control that it reflects a master-slave relationship: communication, property rights, due process, and private life. So the first section here says slavery cannot tolerate free speech, which just seems like an obvious statement. It says communism is profoundly anti-thought and anti-speech. Communist regimes outlaw any perspectives other than their own. Speech and reading are confined to propaganda only. During the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia in 1917, Vladimir Lenin quickly decreed the takeover of all media outlets. Shutting down free expression is key to all totalitarian governments from Nazi Germany to communist China. Communist regimes also require you to accept absurdities such as the slogan "Freedom is Slavery" of Orwell's novel 1984. Compelled speech, self-censorship, and cancel culture are all elements central to communism. In 1860, abolitionist Frederick Douglass emphasized that free speech is the right which they, that's tyrants, first of all strike down. Slavery cannot tolerate free speech. Laws prohibited slaves from learning how to read, so they were kept isolated, ignorant, and compliant. Slaves who didn't adequately self-censor were whipped, sold, or even killed. And in America today, we see constant government and big tech attempts to silence dissent under the guise of protecting us from disinformation. The goal is to enforce the propagandistic narrative in all institutions, particularly in education and media. Censorship is also corrupting medicine, sports, finance, and the military. Americans are quickly learning that they have no right to speak their mind on obvious questions such as, how did a female-identifying male swimmer move from a ranking of number 554 to number 1 without risking social punishment? There's new absurdities emerging in America today, including asserting that speech is violence, compelling speech through gender identity laws that require pronoun protocols, and referring to pregnant women as womb havers. Yeah, that's actual misogyny to all you far leftists out there that like to scream at just anybody criticizing a woman is misogyny. This is actual misogyny here, you morons. So next section says, end of property rights. Own nothing and be happy. You've heard this one already before, probably a lot. Just the you will own nothing and be happy. So his personal ownership of land, a business, or anything of value is particularly hateful to communists. Likewise, slaves were expected to own nothing and be happy. And just as a master who buys and sells human beings feels justified entering slave quarters at any time, so the communist dictator sends his thugs to conduct politicized raids in homes. This is a feature of all totalitarian systems. And where are we now? This exact communism slavery sentiment, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, was central to the 2016 World Economic Forum promotional video, 8 Predictions for the World in 2030. And hopefully not a single one of them comes true, because that is a communist organization and they should be burned to the ground, figuratively speaking, in Minecraft. As the goal is always total dependence on the master regime. We long ago reached the tipping point of over 50% of Americans dependent upon government aid, which doesn't even account for the benefits showered on illegal aliens. For decades, the government has been federalizing huge swaths of land over which it controls access and entry. It uses taxation, accelerated by the desolation imposed during the COVID era, to shut down businesses and home buying. We see law enforcement, it says in scare quotes, conducting politically motivated raids of private residences, often warrantless. Federal agents raid Amish farms, and the FBI seizes the contents of countless safe deposit boxes without cause. Politically incorrect Americans are debanked and targeted by the IRS. Yes, all of that has actually happened and fairly recently, and here's all the links to all of it. So I would suggest going ahead and educating yourself on all that stuff. It says, next section here, it says, due process and rule of law don't exist in communism or slavery. Yeah, and that's really bad. As you can see what's happening with President Trump right now. This pre-dawn raids were a specialty in Stalinist Russia, a clear indicator that due process does not exist in communist regimes. Show me the man and I'll show you the crime, bragged Stalin's chief of secret police, Lavrentiy Beria. I would suggest at this point, seeing this name, if you've never heard of this guy, and I hadn't heard of him until probably the last couple of years, go look up what he's done, and all I'm going to say is you probably should be sitting down and hopefully have a really strong stomach. This guy is absolutely 100% burning in hell with some of the worst people that's ever existed. Just letting you know that ahead of time. This was not a good dude. It says, show trials in kangaroo courts followed by quick execution of the accused were standard practice in all radical utopian revolutions from the French Revolution to Mao's China and beyond. Slaves were treated no differently. The master did as he pleased to slaves, and the law was silent. We're moving towards this scenario with the erosion of the rule of law and due process in America. Diversity, equity, and inclusion tribunals in all of our institutions can use anonymous biased response reports to punish any accused offender. Yeah, basically someone goes, like a woman could just say, like, that guy, did something to me, and they just go, okay, and, like, the guy gets suspended from school, even if he's eventually deemed innocent, and that, like, oh, wait, he never even talked to this person. So, yeah. So it says officially sanctioned virtual lynchings are fast replacing due process. Yeah, due process doesn't exist at universities, and that's very unfortunate. As any fair-minded person can see that the recent show trial of Donald Trump was meant to dispose of a political opponent. The charges and timing were obviously contrived and politically motivated. The same goes for the hundreds of protesters on January 6th who believed they were simply exercising their First Amendment right to petition their grievances, but ended up thrown in jail and even solitary confinement without a trial date. And yes, this actually happened. Okay, and that's a pretty good example of that as well. And again, as I mentioned with the Donald Trump stuff, but the January 6th is probably a better example. Just 10 years ago, Wisconsin district attorneys ordered raids on the home of Governor Scott Walker's supporters. They did? I didn't even hear about that. I'm probably going to have to look into that. This is way before I started even looking into political stuff, so I just wasn't paying attention. But all right, I will have to check that out. It says, today, the FBI conducts political raids on homes from President Donald Trump's residence down to those of unknown pro-life activists. Yes, they do. It says, next section, family separation and invasion of private life. Communist regimes also impose cruel isolation from loved ones, often by inciting political hostilities where hostilities never existed before. Consider Stalinist Russia, where 13-year-old Pavlik Morozov became a national hero for essentially snitching on his father's political incorrectness, leading to his father's execution. Soviet schoolchildren were taught they must emulate Pavlik if they wanted to be socially accepted. All such communist systems teach children that their first loyalty must be to the master state. Yes, and that is wrong. That's why you always see all these people on the far left, trying to separate the family, and with the family dynamics, trying to say, parents, there are no parental rights, or say, these are our children, stuff like that. That's what all of this is. It says, likewise, slaves were sold on the auction block, brutally separated from loved ones. America's move towards socialism comes with many indicators that we're losing the right to a family cohesion and the right to bring up our own children. Family breakdown seems to have been designed by our political overlords, whose power grows when people are isolated. COVID mandates even forced our loved ones to die in isolation. We have an education system that does this thing here, this word, and I can't say that on YouTube, but mind grapes children under the banner of social and emotional learning. We see states promote abortion for minors and the social and surgical transing of children without parental knowledge. Again, it all kind of applies to what I was saying as well about family stuff. Because we're also losing our right to defend ourselves, our families, or even strangers in distress. Consider the case of Daniel Penny, and if you don't know about that, I highly suggest you click on this link here and go check it out, because it's an absolute travesty of justice. But it's going to tell you here what happens. It says, who was charged with murder for trying to protect himself and other New York subway riders from being attacked. We're also quickly losing our right to refuse untested injections into our bodies. So let's dispense with the formalities. Nobody needs to hear a dissertation on Marxism versus capitalism to understand that Marxism is literally slavery. Let's say it every chance we get. As America moves towards communism, it moves towards slavery. But we abolished slavery once in this country, we can do it again. I mean, I'm always an optimistic person, but on this, I'm not so sure the American public as it is has the stomach for it. I certainly hope they do, because it's going to need to be done. We're going to need to do something about this, and I don't know what that would be. It's just not my specialty. I don't know what actions can be taken here, but it would probably start with re-electing President Trump and having him get rid of a lot of the people that work in government. That would be definitely a good start, I would think, and closing some of these institutions down for good. But anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you agree with what this author said, or are you someone out there that's just like, nah, these two words are definitely good things? And if you say that, I want to know why you think they are. Just trying to see if you've been indoctrinated or not. And odds are, if you're saying that these are good, you have been. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.